Welcome to Caribou Country Lifestyle. My name is Cheryl. Tonight I am going to be making a Cabbageroll Casserole. This is a recipe that I got from my mom. It's super easy. It's way easier than rolling up those cabbage rolls individually. It takes a lot less time. You put it all into one pan, and so I'm going to be putting it in this old enamel roaster that I have. This old enamel roaster used to be my grandma's, and when my grandma passed away, her daughter, my aunt, knew that I always loved this enamel roaster, so she gave it to me. So I've had this roaster now for probably 30 years, and I absolutely cherish this roaster. I use it for turkeys, I use it for my Cabbageroll Casserole, I use it for cooking ribs in the oven. I absolutely love it. I would never get rid of it. So with the Cabbageroll Casserole, to start, we are going to cut up some cabbage. And I'm doubling this recipe, so I'm using a pound of Hamburger, a lean Hamburger, and then I'm also using a pound of ground pork. I really like mixing Hamburger and ground pork together. I like the way it tastes. So we'll get this, cut in half, take the core out, and start chopping this up. It was funny, my oldest son called me, and I think he forgot that I was supposed to be in Vancouver this weekend, which I'm not, because yet again I have gotten sick again. This is the third time I've been sick in the last 2 months. Now, granted, I work in the school district. I work with elementary school kids, kindergarten to grade 6. And yes, there's a fair share of sicknesses going around. Right now there seems to be hand, foot, and mouth going around, walking pneumonia, and other viral flu issues. It's just been absolutely crazy. So, needless to say, I did not go to Vancouver. My husband still went to Vancouver because the reason we were going was we had purchased tickets to go see a concert tonight, which was Sam Roberts and the Trios. So we, as in my husband and I, well, he's there, but my sister-in-law was supposed to be coming with us too. Well, she got sick as well. So her and I both got sick within days of each other, and we haven't seen each other for almost a week. It'll be a week tomorrow. And she had said to my husband's brother, who we were going to be staying with in Vancouver, she says, well, I won't be coming, I'm super sick. And I'm like, oh no. Well, wouldn't you know it, the next day I started getting a scratchy throat, and then I kind of went downhill from there. Now my son is sick, my middle son that lives with us, he's sick. So my oldest son calls me and he says, what are you doing? Well, I was in the grocery store picking up hamburger and ground pork, and they had cabbages on sale. So I decided I was going to make this Cabbageroll Casserole. So I said to him, well, I'm looking at buying some hamburger. He says, well, what are you making? And I said, well, you don't like it anyways. And he says, oh yeah, that's what you say when you're making something good. I know it. And I'm like, okay. Well, I'm making Cabbageroll Casserole. And he says, oh my gosh, you know how I don't like cabbage rolls? And I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's what I said. You wouldn't like it. So I said, and besides the fact, I was supposed to be in Vancouver, and then it dawns on him, well, hey, yeah, how come you're not in Vancouver? And I'm like, because I'm sick. And he was like, oh no, well, I don't want to come to your house then anyways because you're sick. I said, yeah, I'm sick. Your brother's sick. And my Leah's sick. My sister-in-law is sick. So anyways, yeah, it's crazy how quickly. And then my youngest son, I guess when my husband had posted on WhatsApp and said that neither Leah or I were coming because we both had gotten sick. Well, my youngest son, Jaden, had read that and he was like, oh no. Because he was at our place last Sunday. We do a family dinner every Sunday. And he was at our place last Sunday. And he was saying then that he had a bit of a scratchy throat. But he figured it was from, because we had just gotten these kittens, thought that he had a scratchy throat from these kittens because he's allergic to cats. And I remember my sister-in-law asking him, oh, how are you being around these kittens? And he's going, well, I have a bit of a scratchy throat, but it's fine. And he said the next day his scratchy throat got worse and he got sick, but he had no idea that we had gotten sick until he had read this on the WhatsApp, and he was just felt horrible about that. So I need 6 cups of chopped cabbage. And right now I have, I don't know. I don't really measure. Not for this recipe. I don't measure. I do have the recipe out because as far as the sauce goes, I definitely want to make sure I have those measurements. But as far as chopped cabbage goes, I like cooked cabbage. And so, I mean, more cabbage in my Cabbageroll Casserole is not a big deal for me. So I am probably gonna, I've cut this in half and then cut it into quarters. I'll probably use 3/4 of the cabbage and then we'll move on from there. So yeah, my youngest son called me today and he was like, how's it going? And I'm like, well, I didn't go to Vancouver. And he says, yeah, I know, I read that in the WhatsApp chat. He says, I felt pretty bad because I think I got you guys sick. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he was saying that he thought it was, you know, getting an allergic reaction from the kittens. And then he says, and then I ended up getting sick and he didn't go to work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And he works in a restaurant. And yeah, I do feel that I am getting better, but I'm definitely not 100%. And the reason why there was no way we were going to go down there was because my sister-in-law works in a bank and she has a very important position, and that's the last thing she would need is for us to show up at her place, because that's where we would be staying, and get anyone sick, let alone my niece lives with them because she has some health conditions and she has a very low immunity system. So that wouldn't be fair to her either, to be showing up sick. And like I say, I'm better than I was, but I'm not 100%. Sometimes I still get a little bit achy. Yesterday I binge watched a new YouTube person, and by 7:30 last night, my eyes were so tired. But then today, like when I went downtown to go get that hamburger, I also had to fill up water bottles because we buy our bottled water, and I needed to get some more dog food as well because we were almost out, and I knew they're closed tomorrow, so I had to get that as well. So here I have, I don't know, I'm doubling the recipe, so that would be about 6 cups of cabbage. I think I'm pretty close. Okay, so that's all we have to do for that right now. Now I'm going to chop up an onion, and I want to dice it into fairly small pieces for my onion. And no, these are not onions from my garden. My onions didn't do very good this year, but yeah, there's always next year. Now we're going to make the sauce for the Cabbageroll Casserole. And that includes chopping up an onion, and I'll let you know right now that I'm using my left hand, but it's got a mind of its own because I have a tremor in my left hand, and the problem is I'm left-handed. So I have to work with what I got. Okay, so we're gonna cut this onion up into small pieces. And on the most part, if I find that my hand is shaking too much, I'll kind of stop and pause and wait, and it will kind of tame down where it's not shaking quite as bad. Or I switch to my right hand depending what I'm doing. Like if I'm using a measuring spoon and I'm measuring something, I can switch to my right hand. I haven't tried chopping things with my right hand because I'm just not sure if I would be that good at it. Okay, so we have the onion is chopped. I'm gonna bring this big bowl over here, and in my bowl, a pound of lean ground hamburger and a pound of lean ground pork. I have to squeeze out this hamburger. Ended up just buying a chub of lean ground hamburger. It was cheaper than buying it by the package. And I mean, lean ground hamburger is lean ground hamburger is lean ground hamburger as far as I'm concerned. Well, why didn't you get hamburger from me? And I said, well, I already did, because he's been giving me elk hamburger. He says, well, I have lots of deer hamburger, because they had just, his fiance had just shot a deer, and they have most of it done up into hamburger. I mean, they got some steaks and done up. I don't know if they got any roast, but anyways, he says, oh, I could have gave you, I have deer, lots of deer hamburger. So I joked to him, oh, it's a free-for-all. And he's like, well, no, it's not that. I'm not just gonna give you whatever you know, a bunch of it. I'll give you some. I'm gonna kind of just chop up this hamburger and mix it together a little bit with the ground pork. And I'm also going to turn my oven on, because it's not going to take long to get the sauce made up. So I've turned my oven on to 350. I just want to mix this up a little bit to get it mixed together. That's good enough. I'm going to be putting other stuff in here. So now I'm going to put my onions in with the hamburger. And I'm also going to put in some rice. So I'm going to put in 6 tablespoons of rice. And I am using a long grain basmati rice. There's 4, 5, 6. 2 tablespoons of oil into this. That's about all I do now, is just clear my throat. I was coughing, it was like a dry cough. So I need 2 tablespoons of oil. I said to my husband, we were going to be going to Costco and Palm, the health food store. So I said, well, are you willing to go to Costco? And he was like, well, I don't want to be having a $600 Costco shop. And I said, no, it won't be that much. It'd be about $200. I had already started making a list of what I wanted, what I needed to get. He kind of looked over the list and he took it with him. I gave him one of those Costco cooler bags because I needed him to, I'm shooting rice around here now. I needed him to pick up some frozen corn because I like getting the Kirkland frozen, the organic frozen corn. Okay, so now what I'm putting in here is tomato soup. This is the tomato soup that I have made because I can't use regular tomato soup. With my son being gluten and dairy free, in the tomato soup they use certain thickening agents. A lot of it could be flour. There's going to be milk products into it because it is a cream of tomato soup. So I found a recipe to make a tomato soup, and I didn't put any cream in it, but I did use rice flour to thicken the soup with. And then I canned it in my pressure canner in these pints. So I'm going to be adding the tomato soup to my hamburger. And this is the first time I've used my tomato soup since I canned it. And that was, when did I can this? October the 14th. And it looks really good. I did try it before we ended up canning it, and it tasted really good. I had my husband try it too, and he thought it had more flavor. Oh, come on. Holy. This gadget usually works a lot better than that. That's quite the seal. So this is a lid lifter for your canning jars. And my brother-in-law made this with his 3D printer. And he gave this to me last year for Christmas. So it's quite a handy little gadget. I'm just going to get a spatula, and we are going to put this tomato soup over our mixture here. And then it says to add a cup of water. So I will just put a cup of water into the jar. So I actually will need to add 2 cups of water, a cup for each batch. So I'll just fill up one of these jars with water, and that's what we'll use. Now this definitely is not as thick as tomato soup usually comes out of the can. So I might just only add half, and we'll stir this up and see what it looks like. Because I've made it with cream of tomato soup, like the Campbell's cream of tomato soup. I've also used a vegan tomato and basil soup. And that is, you can buy that in the grocery store in the cartons. And one of those cartons is like opening up 2 cans of soup. So I have used that as well. But this year I decided that I wanted to use my tomatoes and make my own tomato soup. And then I just had to find a recipe that I could can it in the pressure canner. And so it's pretty cool. I'm pretty impressed by the tomato soup. Okay, so now we have to add some salt and pepper.
Cold and flu symptom relief. There's a comforting cup of Neostition, the power of soothing relief.
It doesn't really give you any measurements, It just says salt and pepper. So, that's what I'm doing. Holy cats, all of a sudden I could hear my TV going and I'm like, well, how can my TV be going? I'm over here and the TV's way over there. Well, the cats must have walked over top of the remote and set it to go back on again. Okay, so I've put in a couple of pinches of salt and we're gonna mix that in. Once it's cooked, I can taste it. I am actually going to put some more of this water in. I need to chop up this ground meat a little bit more too, just so it's not in chunks. That's not how you usually eat cabbage rolls. Well, it's rolled up in cabbage, so I guess it is in a chunk if you really want to be technical about it, but not in a casserole. Okay, so I'm going to add just a little bit more of the water. And we'll mix that up. And if I wanted, I could use if I didn't want to use water and I wanted it to be more creamier, because we are gluten and dairy free, I would just I have oat milk and I would use that. There's another chunk of ground meat that needs to be broken up. Okay, so now my oven is ready. I'm gonna pour this over my cabbage. I'm not gonna stir it. I'm just gonna take everything out of here, get every little bit of it. And then I'm gonna smooth it over the cabbage. I see a chunk of ground meat that I just wanna chop it up a little bit more. So smooth that over the cabbage. And then I'm gonna put this in the oven at 350 for 1.5 hours. And what it's gonna do is that moisture from the soup and the meat is going to steam that cabbage underneath. So I put my lid on and we'll put this in the oven. I'm gonna set my timer for 1.5 hours. And we will have our dinner ready in 1.5 hours. That's all there is to it. It's a casserole. That's all we'll be having. We might have a little pickle on the side or something like that, but it's pretty easy. Maybe you want a piece of bread to have with it with some butter on it. But it's actually a really great recipe. Now, all I have to do is mix this together. I'll grab my spoon. And my cabbage is totally cooked through. And then I just mix this all up so that everything, some of these chunks, I can break them down a little bit more. I didn't want to mix it, but now I can mix it in and I don't have to worry about. And then when you go to have it, you can always adjust the seasonings. If you need more salt, you can put more salt in and go from there. If you want more pepper, you can add that. It's just such a great casserole, super easy. I had this in the oven at 4:30. It was finished by 6 o'clock, just in time for dinner. And it didn't really take that much to put together. And I didn't have to roll up a bunch of cabbage rolls. I remember my grandma who had this roaster. That's what she would do every Sunday. Like, I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan. And every Sunday when we were growing up, we would go to my grandma's house, and in this roaster, there would always be something fantastic in here. Sometimes it was she made cabbage rolls, and she did it where she rolled them up in the cabbage and everything. They were super awesome. My grandma was Ukrainian. She also, sometimes she would make pierogies, and the roaster would be filled with pierogies, which was patahay in Ukrainian. Sometimes she did holubchi, which is like a lazy Cabbageroll casserole, but it doesn't have the tomato sauce on it. And sometimes she did, it's Bismarcks. And she used to make them, and this roaster would just be filled with Bismarcks. Now, she didn't cook them in the roaster. They were actually made from dough, and they were deep fried, kind of like bannock. Because after she deep fried them, we would either put jam on them or honey on them, and oh my gosh, they were so good. I absolutely love Bismarcks. My husband really wishes I would make some, but I don't think I'm gonna make any. That's too much work. So anyways, I'm gonna put some into a dish. It's gonna be super hot, so I just wanna make sure that I blow on it. And then I can try it and adjust the heat, or adjust the seasonings, I should say. So I'll get a little bit of everything in here. Some cabbage. I have to blow on it quite a bit because it's going to be hot just out of the oven. That's really good. That homemade tomato soup that I made, that was bang on. So you could use a cream of tomato soup, and like I say, I doubled this recipe. So for 6 cups of cabbage, you would have 2 cans of tomato soup, a couple of pounds of ground meat, and your rice, and then add some water to it. And as this kind of sits, it kind of thickens up even more. There'll be even less liquid in here. I probably didn't need to add that extra bit of water, but I don't need to add any more salt. It's really good the way it is. So there you have it. Cabbageroll casserole, made simple. My son doesn't like it, but that's one person. My other 2 sons like it, my husband likes it. So anyways, I just wanted to share what I was doing for dinner tonight. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk again soon. Bye for now.